All right, so we've got one of the legends of YA sci-fi, not sci-fi, well, fantasy, romance,
right?
also adult romance and fantasy.
Yes.
She's been writing for over 20 years,
Yes.
I believe,
Published
and
for over 20 years. Yeah.
dozens of books, many awards.
50 plus books.
50 plus.
Well,
I couldn't quite count all of them when I was
I know. I'm just saying the 50 plus because the math is not my strongest.
That's incredible. It's very prolific. Won many awards, been on bestseller lists, like all across the board. Have written about all kinds of fantasy creatures, like from mythology to witches to vampires, obviously, and your probably best known House of Night series that you worked on with your daughter, I believe.
I wrote them, and she was my teen voice editor, and especially for the last 4, the Otherworld spinoff, Love, Lost, Forgotten, Found.
Nice.
She extensively edited those. She's a great editor.
That's so great to have that relationship. I feel like if I was working with my child, I'd be like,
Well, we've
awesome.
been working together since she was 19.
Nice.
So
that's great.
Yeah, I do pull the mom card sometimes though, and we're like, no, and she's like, but why? Because I'm the mom.
Right.
That's
the only answer.
That's what I say every
like.
time.
Yep.
But she's like, can my name be on top? I'm like, no. I'm the mom. No, I get my name on top.
That's
She wants to go alphabetically.
I mean, I guess that
because
makes
K
sense.
comes before P,
Right,
so
right.
I still say no. I still say no.
Awesome, and you had a very interesting past before you started writing. You were in the U.S. Air Force.
I was. Yeah,
and then I
taught for 15 years.
You were a teacher for a long time.
Yep.
So, what made you decide to kind of retire from that and like just write full time?
First of all, I loved teaching. Loved my teenagers. Loved my classroom. I loved teaching. But as we know, especially today, teaching in the Bible Belt, Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, especially when you believe in giving your students the tools they need to critically assess things. So teaching real literature, real history, real science. That's not so much on the. That's not on the lesson plan for Broken Arrow Public Schools in Oklahoma, and I really did not want to stop teaching. Did not want to stop teaching until, I didn't even then. The second book in the House of Night series was my 18th book published, and it debuted number 2 on the Times list. And when that happened, I sent a school-wide email thanking my peers for coming to my signings when there were like 5 people there, and I was related to 2 of the 5, and then the other 3 were teachers. So I thanked them, and my principal promptly came down to my classroom, pulled me out of the classroom, and admonished me for sending a personal email school-wide, even though it was perfectly fine to send prayer requests, and I have a truck I need to sell, and that kind of stuff. When he did that, I just decided, you know what, I don't
have time for that.
I don't have time for it. It's too stressful. And so then I decided to retire.
Fair enough.
But I will always miss my classroom and my kids.
I was going to say, that's a loss for the kids. I've read a couple things about there are people that consider you a mentor from
my
back
kids.
in that area.
Yeah, I still stay there. There are some kids I stay real close to still. They're grown-ups.
Right.
Okay, now they're grown-ups. Like John Maslin, who I based Damien on.
Okay.
Who I've known since he was... John and I argue about this. I think I've known him since he was 14, and he said it was 15. He's now a nurse practitioner, and he and his partner have actually fled Tulsa because you're not allowed to love who you want to love there.
Tulsa has a very sketchy history.
Very sketchy history of that. And they've moved to the Portland area where I live. So now I get to hang out with Damien all the time.
That's awesome. How did you end up in Portland? That's a great place to live.
I had, Kristen and I, when we decided to leave Tulsa, I had a list and she had a list, and we just started visiting all the cities on our list, and Portland won.
Awesome, yeah.
Love the Pacific Northwest, all of it. Love all the West Coast too, in particular.
Is that helpful for your writing, do you think? Do you have a specific thing that you do?
Yeah, well, this is all set in all of this Tales of a New World series is all post-apocalypse, starting in Portland, set all around there. It's all real places. We do eventually move to the Wind Rider Plains, which is the tall grass prairie in Oklahoma.
Okay. There you
So
go. So you
do come back home.
You definitely use your history and your.
Yeah, and that, and I have an adult apocalypse book out right now.
I was looking at that. That one looks really interesting.
Into the Mist. That's
Yeah.
set. It starts at Timberline, right outside of Portland. It's
Okay.
current. It's a whole group of teachers from Oklahoma come to a spring break there, and as they're going back to the airport, the apocalypse happens.
It's funny.
I call it the PC apocalypse because it's all about wine, women, and weed. So,
I like it.
yeah,
I like it.
you'll like it.
That's the 3 W's.
The 3 W's, yes.
Excellent. I like how like not almost, but a lot of your stories, especially the adult ones, start with like a teacher
Yes.
who is then like thrust into like in a mythological world or whatever. It almost seems like kind of a parallel
Oh,
to
you
your
must
life.
have read
You're like a teacher and then you like
Yes. Write what you know, girl.
Right.
Write what you know. Like in Goddess of Spring, my heroine had same job I had in the Air Force. It's just, I like researching, but if I already know it, why research it?
Right.
Okay?
And then you can just have your flights of fancy.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Exactly.
So this is the fourth
the
and
fourth
the final
book.
book in this series.
It's the final
right?
book in the heroine we've been following for
Okay.
4 books. It's her final story. I did leave a little back door open, just in case. I have 2 more books in my head, but whether I get to write them or not is all about sales. So,
Right.
just,
Capitalism.
right? Capitalism is what I get contracted for because
Right.
it's how I make my living. So.
Also, like, I don't know who does like your covers or if they're different for each, but your covers are always very
Oh,
like,
they're
eye-catching
beautiful.
and beautiful.
Yeah, the covers for Tales of a New World, I got to help design all of them.
That's awesome.
Super proud of them. So
Yeah,
yeah.
they're beautiful.
These I did not. I didn't
Those
get
are
to design
interesting.
these, but they're beautiful too. I
love
like
the cat
them.
in each of them. It's really
The
cute.
cat, that's Xena Warrior Princess cast, and she says this doesn't look very much like her, but she is the star of the series.
Is that your main coon cat?
It's my main coon. Yeah.
That's an amazing name. And I was looking at your website. You've got your Scotty.
My Scotty dogs,
They are
all
so
4 of them.
Your pack.
My pack, the Scottish Brigade. While I'm touring, the Scottish Brigade is at summer camp.
I'm sure they're having a blast.
They're having a blast. The Maine Coon is not happy. She's not having a blast.
I would imagine. Yeah, that seems about right.
She doesn't like leaving home.
I'm cat sitting right now and dealing with the separation
Oh, yeah.
anxiety, and the cats do not like me. They're like,
Mine's not
"Mom's
happy.
here."
Yeah, mine's not happy. I know she's not. I'm gonna go back. She's gonna yell at me, yell at me, yell at me, and yeah.
So do you have like Scottish background in the ancestry? Because you're talking
I'm-
about Scotland. and
I'm Welsh.
Scottish
We're Welsh
Okay.
descent. Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. I lived in the Scottish Highlands on and off a little bit for a couple of years, and it's always like a second home to me.
That's awesome. Because it definitely seems like you weave a decent amount of like Celtic mythology into your.
I do.
your
Actually,
work, too.
next summer, I have a brand new book coming out that is a completely different genre for me. It's going to be a historical. It's the
Boudica?
Boudica. It's Boudica.
I'm excited about that. I was reading
I
that.
can't
up.
wait.
That's awesome.
Can't wait for you guys to read it. It's done right now, and it's awesome. But it's a retelling of Boudica's story. She was an ancient British queen, British,
Yeah.
not British. She was Celtic,
Right.
but it's ancient Britain, and she, in 60 AD, she united the Celtic tribes and they almost ran the Romans out of Great Britain. And I can't wait for you guys to read her story. I
That's
love
so
her
cool.
so much. And my next historical book will be the true story of Skyatch, which Skyatch was the Highlands queen from House of Knight. She's a Pictish queen.
Okay.
She was based on a Pictish queen who really lived. I'll tell her story next, and then after that, I'm hoping to tell like Medea or something.
Oh,
I'm going to give
nice.
voice to ancient queens.
I love that.
So, looking forward to that a lot.
Awesome. You'll have to come back when you do that because I'm really looking
Oh,
forward to the
definitely.
Boudica one. That one sounds.
Absolutely, next summer.
Awesome.
Yep.
What was I gonna say? I have the next question.
Happens to me all the time.
What's the key to your longevity? I mean, you've been 50 plus books, and how are you able to maintain that creative juices flowing?
I think it's just the way my brain works. Like
Yeah.
as I am getting to towards the end of a series or a book, my brain's immediately thinking of what I'm going to write next.
Mm.
You know, people have like my brothers are like, "Are you ever going to retire?" I'm like, "Well, first of all, I'm only 63. Okay, I'm not old. I'm not retirement yet, but I don't know if I ever can, because
Right.
my brain will be
Too many
like,
stories to tell.
yeah, and I don't have any desire to. I love my job, so I just think it's the way my brain works.
Yeah.
I don't know, I just love to tell stories, and as I love research and travel, and when I do both, I immediately, like, if I grab a nonfiction book about some event or something, I immediately, as I read it, I start retelling it, my version of it in my head,
Okay.
or start building a world based on whatever that is. So, yeah, I think it's just weird.
So it could be just something very small, like an item, something you see, and you can base a story on that sometimes. And
For example,
Yeah, for
my
example.
first New York published book was Goddess of the Sea, and it was a retelling of the Undine mermaid myth. And I thought of that because I went to the Philbrook Museum in Tulsa. They had an exhibit called The Golden Age. And I remember I walked into a room and just stopped. The statue made me it just stopped me in my tracks. I looked at it and it was marble. It was a naked woman. She was like pulling up something over, like a cloak over her head. And the light, the marble was so light and beautiful that you could see light shining through it. It looked like she was alive. And I read the tag on it, and it said, "The Mermaid Undine." And I remember I was like, well, then we didn't have, computers in our pockets.
Yeah.
So, because it was like in the 90s. And I remember I took out a piece of paper and I wrote everything down that it said on the thing. And I looked at it and said, I'm going to write a book about you. And I did.
Wow.
It happens to me all the time. I always see a little thing like that and I'm like, ooh, I know a story about this I can tell.
Yeah.
What's like kind of your process? Because it seems that you are very prolific, so you write
Write
several
a lot.
books a year. So like, how do you kind of like keep up that?
I can write 2 books at once. I can go back and forth. It's tough for me to do 3, but I can do 2, especially when I'm writing one by myself and then one with my daughter, because she and I go back and forth.
Right.
When I'm writing with my daughter, we outline extensively. We outline even chapter by chapter, and we even put like dialogue in our outline, which is crazy. I hate doing it. Kristen is a really good outliner. I'm a terrible outliner.
The editing.
Oh, it's awful. She's an awesome editor too. When I write by myself, I usually have a beginning scene, an end scene, and a couple middle scenes, and then I write myself a letter about what I want to write, and that's how I do that. And then I just start working.
Excellent. Do you have any advice for somebody who'd want to be like a fantasy, or even just like specifically like a YA writer? Because not at all for me.
Yes, I do. Well, I write adult books too. I ignore genres when I write.
Right. So much
I don't-
YA is like could totally be adult as well. Like there's some amazing stuff.
I don't pay attention to genres. I just write according to the characters. That's all. My advice is, if you're an aspiring author and you want to be a step ahead of all the other aspiring authors, research the job of being a published author. Understand how it gets from here to your computer, from your computer to your agent, from your agent to your editor. What happens to it once it's at a publishing house? So many authors, it's just like, if I wanted to be a dentist, I would not walk into a dentist office and say, oh my God, would you let me start drilling? I would research what kind of education I needed, and then I would get the education, and I would practice and go through all those steps. Because being an author is such a rose-colored glasses kind of career, people don't understand that it's also a business and it's work. And Nora Roberts is really good at talking about this, how it is a business, and she is a icon, right? So, I mean, it's a business. So learn how the business functions. So many young authors have not one clue.
Interesting. It's
What do
like,
agents do? Isn't my editor going to rewrite that for me? If only, dude, if only.
I have
Okay?
an idea. I'll write it down and then people take it. Right? They'll just like,
No, that's not how that even happens. And why does it take a year for a book to come out?
right.
So if you educate yourself about the business of publishing, you'll be a step ahead of all those other wannabes who don't have a clue.
And it doesn't sound like you have much writer's block, just because.
I don't really.
What happens?
I don't really believe in writer's block.
Okay.
I believe that there are a lot of people. Sometimes there are. I have one of my very best friends rewrote the same paragraph for 19 years. she honestly had writer's block. She had a very successful book when she was very young, and then she struggled to find that voice again. She did eventually, but she struggled. She is literally the only person I've known who's had for real writer's block. The rest of them, here's the secret. Writing's hard. Okay, it's really hard to write a book. It's hard. You have to write and rewrite again and rewrite again and rewrite again. And it's also hard to maintain 100,000 words of story. And people will get 20,000 words into it and then be like, oh my God, it's hard, I have writer's block. No, you just need to sit your butt down and write through it. Okay, you need to, or maybe you need to develop your world better. Or maybe you need to develop your characters more fully. Or maybe your story isn't good and you need to scrap it and think of something else. Instead, we've allowed people to say, no, it's writer's block. No, if it's writer's block, I can't pay my bills. Okay, so that means you have to sit down and write through that if you want to be a professional writer.
That's excellent advice.
Mary had a question.
I was just curious, from your place in the publishing world, how you would explain or what you think about the Colleen Hoover phenomena.
I am very happy for her. I do not believe that writing or books are like pie, that if you take a piece of it, there's none for others.
Right.
I am always super excited when an author becomes very successevitable. I'm happy for that author, and I'm happy for the readers, because it always revitalizes the whole, reading, and I enjoy all that, and I am happy for her, and I wish her all the very best.
It's just, I'm just so curious about the timing. What is it about this time that makes people so hungry for her work? Because it's pretty spectacular when someone takes up so much space on
right?
the New York Times bestseller. I'm just so
I
curious.
haven't read any of her books yet.
I haven't either.
I tend to gravitate towards fantasy more, paranormal more. I also have been very busy reading a lot of women of color. A lot of women of color. It is way past time that publishers and publishing has opened the doors to the women of color telling their own damn stories, okay? And they are brilliant, and they are incredible and beautiful, and so I am sucking in all the women of color authors. I'm just reading one right after another, supporting, encouraging, and being very happy about that. So I haven't read Colleen yet. Kristen has, my daughter has, and my daughter says that, I asked her that thing. I was like, what is it? What? And she said, she has the ability to make you absolutely love her characters. And she said, that's what I think her thing is. Because Kristen's like, the storylines are just the storylines, but her characters, you fall in love with her characters. So
Great.
I guess she's a good characters teller.
What are you reading now, and what's inspiring you in terms of your
Oh my
own
God,
writing?
okay. I've been on tour. I've been driving on tour, right? So I've been listening to audiobooks for all the hours I've been driving all the way from Portland down to San Diego. My favorite thing I just finished was Fourth Wing. Yes! It is so worth the hype. Fourth Wing is wonderful. I just finished Daughter of the Moon Goddess, and the second book in it is Heart of the Sun Warrior. They were incredible, beautiful. Oh, her language was amazing. I think one of my very favorite books in the world is, I think everyone should read it. It's by Cherie Dimaline, and it's called The Moral Thieves. It's a very small YA book, and it is, Cherie Dimaline is Indigenous Canadian, and anything she writes is amazing. I've read all her books, but The Moral Thieves, just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But and I am listening to, I'm right at the very end of Falling. The flight attendant turned best-selling author.
T.J. Newman.
T.J. Newman,
Yeah.
yes. I read her first, Falling is the first one. Falling was the first one I read.
Yeah.
I'm almost done with Drowning. Dude, if you're
second
getting on an airplane, don't read this one. Okay, just wait. Just wait until you get off the airplane.
Her story's incredible, though. She wrote that first book while being a flight attendant on Red Eyes, and
She's awesome. She's a
really cool lady.
fantastic thriller writer. I completely recommend her.
yeah.
Yeah. I love audiobooks.
I like what you mentioned about the diverse voices, because I know in the kids room we have like we need more diverse voices,
Yes.
like movement in children's books, and that's great that that's really coming to the forefront.
Absolutely.
Did you have anything else you wanted to share?
Yep, Kristen and I have a new book series coming out in the spring. The first book's called Draw Down the Moon. We're returning to a magical school setting. It's not like House of Nights, but it is a paranormal school that is set off the coast of the Pacific Northwest, and it is a cloaked island. So it's real cool. We're having a lot of fun with that. And then of course I have Boudica coming out. Rebel Warrior Queen. That comes out next summer.
Fantastic.
Great.
Great. Did you have any more questions?
No, I'm good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us. This was amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.